Danse, and hello everyone. My name is Janelle Pewapsconias. Gigawinawaski nitsigasun. Menaikosis mina waskijuse niaute. I come from Little Pine First Nation over the hill, and that is about 45 minutes west of here of North Battlefords, Saskatchewan. And I am a spoken word artist. I am kind of like the first generation university graduate out of my family. I'm also a mother to one beautiful 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old son. And I just moved back to my home community of Little Pine First Nation about 2 years ago. And today I wanted to share a little bit about story. Little S story and big S story, and why story is important, and why story has been so important to me, and how it's been really important to understand story and where it comes from, and breaking it down even to words and what words mean and where they come from is very important. And so today I kind of wanted to speak more about, my understanding of story and how important it is. And just like this video we are viewing today, this is a story. It's a narrative. It's an unfolding of what has happened within COVID times, within a pandemic, within 2020 and 2021, and this day and age. Politically, sociologically, etc., etc. So where do I begin? Let me talk to you a little bit about myself then. I grew up in Little Pine First Nation, like I said, about 45 minutes west of here. I was in my home community until I was about 18 years old. And when I was 18, I graduated from high school in Cutknife. And I am the oldest of 4 siblings. And so being the oldest and having the most experience out of my family, I wanted to get out in the world. I was raised to think that I can do anything. I was raised to think that no matter where I come from, no matter how hard it is, no matter the story, if I tried really hard to achieve anything, I can do what I wanted to, if it happens that way. And so when I went to university, I thought it was really important for me to get a really high-paying job. I thought it was really important for me to succeed and to overcome adversity, because that was the story I told myself as a young neyihaw or Indigenous person, was that is the only way that I'm of value. So that's the layer under the story that I was raised to believe, is it's either I could be a stereotype or I could overcome adversity and succeed. There's not a lot of stories that I knew of back then that I could do. And so those are the stories that I grew up thinking that I could do. And so when I went into engineering for those 2 years, I found it really challenging. I found it really hard to try to continue learning. I found it really hard to not only go through university as pretty much one of the only Indigenous peoples in my program, let alone the college, to be so far away from my family and disconnection to our stories and support was really hard. And so that was kind of the pause on my story in university for then. I took some time to figure out what I wanted. I took some time to look back at who I was and what are the stories that helped form who I was. And that was a really huge learning curve for me, because I went to school reading a lot of textbooks. You have to have a certain grade point average to go into those kinds of colleges. Not only that, I read a lot of Canadian literature, not necessarily Indigenous literature. So those were the kinds of stories that helped, or maybe put blinders on to other content. So in those years that I took off university after that was filled with healing stories, was when the residential school commission and the whole process started to come out. And that was the very first time that I learned part of my story was that my parents were part of the residential school system, as well as their family members, as well as the community I was from. And being parts of those stories kind of unfolded into the world that it formed today. And I was thinking, well, what about those two stories that I've been told my whole life? Stereotype or overcoming adversity, where do I fit in that? So it added another narrative to understanding this world that I live in. And that's when I learned about resilience. And the story of resilience is having perhaps some hard, traumatic, life-altering experiences that happen to you. And not only has that happened to you, you've taken that and strengthened yourself to become more. But what I didn't realize about the story of resilience is that it eliminates the reality of what has happened to you, that you're more than just overcoming, that resiliency isn't something that's necessarily what we should be striving for. And there's a lot of story that comes to me realizing that. Long story short, I used part of that time to realize what other stories were out there, what were the stories that helped formed who I thought I was, and what kind of story do I want now? Because I can't go back and no one can go back and change the past. But we can learn about it. But we can understand the systems and the people in those decision-making powers and those biases and understandings of the world that helped form the world back then, so that we don't perpetuate them and create harm in the future. So history is important, and the story of the unfolding of today is part of that. And so I decided to go back to university after that. And it was a world of something different than I understood. It was coming to this understanding that I belonged, that my identity is strong despite of what happened and the stories that have impacted who I was. And I was very lucky to have wonderful experiences after that. I had a baby son. I have overcome a domestically violent relationship in that time as well. I started not one business, but two businesses. And not only that, I found that this world of spoken word was not only just like liberating for me, but it was a way for me to connect to my story and to share it to the world. And I come from this place in the prairies where I grew up with stories that didn't help me form in the most positive way, in the best way that I could. And I then realized in that point in time that I could be one of those storytellers that help form and build other people up. So that's where I came into spoken word poetry. And I'd also like to share a poem within this video story that we're telling. And yeah, that's how I came into the world of spoken word, is understanding that stories help form us and can build us in ways that we cannot imagine. So what kind of stories do I have that I can contribute to the world? What kind of stories can other people help contribute to the world? So that's a point that I would like to ask. Now I'm done university and college. I've decided after multiple education pathways within renewable resource sciences, lands management, and business administration, I kind of decided, I think I'm done for now. I'd still like to go back and get some more education around the sciences and how Indigenous stories relate to that topic. And that's something that I'm really curious about. And I see the overlap and I see possibilities. So that's something I would love to get into in the future. But in the now, I think about, what does words mean? What do words mean? What do language mean? As I mentioned, I am an intergenerational residential school survivor. So my relationship to neyihaw, or my language, Y dialect Cree, is a little bit mixed. I know people who speak it, and I speak a little bit of it, but I'm not fluent in the language. So my understanding of the world comes a bit by being formed by English, but also having parents and a community that has a connection to understanding the word from a Cree language. And so I wanted to explore, what does that mean? What is the differences between understanding words and the world from an English perspective versus what do neyihaw people think being formed with the language? And it's quite different, but very similar. I had a knowledge keeper break down the word neyihaw. Neyihaw has 3 syllables in it. In syllabics, that would mean that there would be about 3 or 4 characters in that. Neyihaw. So there would be 4 syllables. And each syllable has a story. And that's a bit of cultural learning and tradition that I can't really get into over this video. But I can tell you that with each syllable, each character, there was a story. There was a teaching in how this character and this sound lived in the world. There was an importance and a life to the sound. So if you can think about the word as having syllable, having spirit, having life, having importance, then the 4 syllables, neyihaw, when you put them together, that's 4 times the story, 4 times the importance, 4 times the impact that you have in the world. Now, so from a scientific perspective, the word is also a vibration and a wave. It goes into the space that I'm in right now. It has impact on the people that can hear it and that are listening to it. Is another layer of understanding. And so if I think about my traditional understanding of word, of having impact in life, plus the scientific understanding that I have about words having vibrations and energies and impact in the world, then the one word is so important. And that's what I wanted to also share about this. Story is a series of words and understandings and meanings and iterations, nuance, layers. And so story is more than just hearing something. There's moral to it. There's meaning to it. There's understanding to it. And then there's also the responsibility of the person receiving it and how you're giving that energy into the world. So words aren't just words. They matter. And if you consider your lineage, the positionality of how you've come to this position, to where you are, from your family to your grandparents to their great-grandparents to all that, if you consider all those that are with you, plus the weight of what words are and story is, then those things are all important. And I hope that gives people mindfulness about what you say, about how you say it in the world. An elder once told me, we have 2 ears to hear with. We have 2 eyes to see with. We have 2 hands and 2 legs to feel with and sense with. And only 1 mouth, not 2. So hearing that teaching, that it's also important for us to listen twice and feel and experience twice before speaking the once. And that's culturally different to people. When you see First Nations peoples or Indigenous peoples who are more traditional, they might come across as quiet or reserved, judgmental, whatever. But those who carry that understanding that words are powerful and important know that we should listen twice and speak only once. And that, after being reintroduced to that concept, after becoming a spoken word artist, after going through university, after just coming into just finally sitting on life and living life, because it was such a long time of trying to learn things, was that I'm so lucky to have this space and this place to share the story, to have folks that listen, to have space to even say it or think of it in this way. And that is liberating. And it's important to me and others. And I'm thankful for this space and experience to do that today. So this is a poem that I crafted last year. For the month of July, I challenged myself to write 1 poem about the water per day on a different topic. This was really important for me because water issues are becoming more and more prevalent within Canada. Water issues are disproportionately impacting First Nations communities. And even myself have had experiences within the last year of having no running water within my home. And so the topic of water is really important for us to not only think about, but also to establish and strengthen our relationships with water. So what does that mean to you? I wrote this poem called Gimawan, meaning rain, as it was raining on my tent at night. And to hear the rain in a northern forest at night is eerie. It's multi-dimensional, it sounds like, because the sound just comes 360 and 180 degrees over you in every which direction. So this was a poem for the rain. Gimawan. The sound of rain at night in the northern forest is alive and with spirit. Whole forest around you in prayer with hundreds of branches meeting each drop, rain droplets kissing each leaf's face. It thanks it as it comes, embrace the nanoseconds as upon it, and that embracing and thanking it as it goes, and thank you, thank you, thank you in the language of the tree, with spirit, alive in the northern forests, at night in the sounds of rain. And so, thank you for that. All sounds are really important. And when I mention the language of the tree, I think about the sounds that the tree makes. The creak, the flutter, the shake, the motion and movement between each forest, and the trees are alive and you can hear it. And so thank you for the opportunity to read this poem and for taking part in this project. Every person has a story and perspective that no one else and the world has more than you do. And so when you think about how important your words are, just know that you are going to be part of this larger story no matter where you share it. So thank you for the opportunity. And just remember, your words are alive. Your words are important. So let us tell our stories with care. Thank you.